Good morning from a cold Bangalore, and good afternoon or good evening, whichever part of the world you are. I'm Vishwanath. I'm from Biome Environmental Trust. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this event on TEDxBiome Environmental Trust, and it's titled "A City and Its Used Water." We are in the era of the Anthropocene. We are in the era of climate change, and we are in the era of a pandemic. Anthropocene, with all its consequent pollution of the environment and the atmosphere, the era of climate change with global warming, erratic rainfall, and many of those impacts, and the era of the pandemic with SARS-CoV-2 and newer variants coming into the picture. What does that have to do with used water? As we go through the set of talks that we have lined up for you, you listen in from experts, researchers, academicians, government officials, civil society people, and individuals who are engaging with what's called used water. Just as a definition, sewage was the previous name, wastewater was the second name. Many of the researchers now prefer to call it used water because it has just seen one use and is capable of many uses. What do we do with this used water? How do we engage with it? How do we learn from it? How do we reuse it? How do we make sure that there's no pollution caused by it? That's the set of issues that will be addressed by our panelists. A bit of the rules for the game. You have the chat box below. The chat box is a place for conversations. Do put in as many comments as you want and engage in conversations with other listeners. There's a Q&A box. We have been joined by many of the panelists and the speakers for today. They will be there, hopefully throughout the conversation. And if you have any specific question to any one of the specific speakers, do put in the name and write it in the Q&A box. You will get an answer today. And if you don't get an answer today, we'll make sure that we record it and put it back to the speakers so that perhaps in the near future, you'll be able to get an answer. So the Q&A box for question and answers, the chat box for conversations. Enjoy the discussions. My name is Vishwanath, and I'm with the Biome Environmental Trust based out of Bangalore in South India. Today, we are going to discuss used water. Previously, we used to refer to this as sewage or sometimes as wastewater. The new parlance is used water. For every 100 liters of water that enters a house, 80 to 90 liters comes out as used water from our bath, from washing clothes, from doing the dishes, and various other activities. And at a city scale, about 80% of the water that enters the city also leaves it as used water. Used water is increasingly seen now as a resource and not as a pollutant as it previously was. Come, let's listen to some of the practitioners who take used water at an individual household level, at a gated community level, and at an apartment level, and see how they are transforming it to a very useful product.
Hi, I'm Mahalakshmi and I'm an architect. You are in my garden that is fed on treated wastewater. In 2010, my husband and I were able to buy this plot of land in urban Bangalore and build a house. Having grown up in big cities, we were acutely aware of the pressures on the city's infrastructure. namely the water supply and the sewage and the drainage. Where the growth in population is exponential, the city's infrastructure is stretched and often falls short. Developmental works seldom keep up pace with the needs of the population. With the intention of building a house that is less of a burden on the city, we were exploring options on how to be self-sufficient and reduce the waste that we generate. In order to take care of the wet organic waste from the kitchen, we decided to compost it and use it in our garden. We invested in a 30,000 litre underground sump that collects Bangalore's ample rain. It serves us very well during the dry months of January, February and March. To treat our grey water, we were recommended the DWAT system, Decentralized Wastewater Treatment System. Biome helped us with the design and the commissioning of the system. It was designed for a family of 6 and designed for an input of 600 litres of water per day. In 2010, our expenditure on it was about 80,000 rupees, including the civil works, the plumbing and the motor. The physical setup of the system is a 2 feet wide trench, which is 2 feet deep and 24 feet long. It is filled with layers of gravel of various but specific sizes. It has PVC perforated pipes on the bottom of the trench, and the floor of the trench is laid to a slope of 6 inches over the 24 feet. The reeds are planted in the bed of gravel such that the roots are in the water. The water enters the system at the shallower end of the trench and flows through the reed bed and is discharged on the deeper end into a well. The well is made of concrete rings that are stacked one on top of the other, and it is plastered and waterproofed lest the grey water percolates into the soil around. The trench also is plastered and waterproofed to hold the water that comes into the system. We also have an overhead tank exclusively to collect the grey water and supply it to the various levels of the house where we have use for it. The planning for the system involved finding the right place. We found ample space at the rear of the house where there was also sunshine, which is an important part of this whole process. Therefore, we had to locate all our toilets and the kitchens to the rear of the building in order to efficiently collect and do the plumbing work accordingly to collect the grey water. We also additionally added an overhead tank that could collect all the grey water and deliver it at the various levels of the house because we have some terrace garden. And as a lifestyle change, we had to switch over to organic soaps and detergents, which have considerably reduced the malodor and the foaming of the treated wastewater. The pros of the system are that it is very efficient system, which is low cost and low maintenance as well, because it doesn't depend on any electrical power source or any diesel power source, and it's not prone to breakdown really. It also looks aesthetic because of the reeds, the greenery, plus there is no stagnant water that is evident, which means there is no risk of breeding mosquitoes in them. The cons, I would say, sometimes when we are traveling and the inflow of water is not as much, the reeds do tend to dry out. So we have to make arrangements for the reed bed to have enough water till we come back. And sometimes delicate plants do not thrive very well in the treated grey water. The hardier ones, as you can see, are doing very well. And the third would be that it has a bit of E. coli, so you really can't use it for anything else. But it definitely feels good to be able to use our wastewater within our own house instead of dumping it onto the city's system. I do recommend this DWAT system to anybody who wants to build a house, irrespective of the size of the plot, the size of the family, the budget, or your capabilities. It definitely is an efficient and low maintenance system. Thank you.
Be the change you wish to see. Classic Orchards is a community that leads by example. A community located on Bannerghatta Road in Bengaluru. It welcomes you with the avenue trees lined on either sides of the road. We as a community make a consistent and a conscious effort to create a sustainable development model. Given the exemplary role we play, we have many green initiatives to our credit. One such green initiative we will be looking today is how we as a community have been successful in substituting the potable water with the recycled water for running many of our day-to-day errands. On an average, with 1.5 lakh liters of recycled water daily at our disposal, we decided ways to explore to make use of this recycled water. In the first phase, which was initiated about 8 years back, we started using recycled water to maintain the common areas which were earlier maintained by the potable waters. We started this initiative with a small green patch in the clubhouse. In about 2 years' time, we had 100% coverage of the common areas being maintained by the recycled water. The second phase of the project was to ensure that every individual house has access to this recycled water. A roadmap was laid down to take up this project in a phased manner. In about 3 years' time, every individual plot had access to this recycled water at the turn of the tap. About 300 houses are using it to maintain their garden, and 200 plus vacant plots can use it from the time of construction. The villas have been using it mainly to maintain their personal green space, washing car and all such errands. Some interesting innovations of the recycled water is being seen both at the community level and individual level. One of the individuals have connected the recycled water to the flush tanks in the house. The recycled water get recycled again. At the community level, the recycled water was purchased by BWSSB for its construction purpose. I would like to quote the famous American poet W.H. Auden, quote, "1,000 have lived without love, not one without water," unquote. Water is a precious commodity. We try not to waste the excess. To overcome the wastage issue, we have located 2 different storage tanks in the community. We store the excess recycled water more so during the rainy season, where the need for the recycled water is reduced substantially. All these initiatives have come up with their own challenges. The first and foremost challenge was the acceptance of the recycled water. Most of them were not ready to use this water. To overcome this challenge, the management went ahead and did a pep talk with the staff, understood their concerns and addressed the same. The association also regularly checks the water quality. All the projects were implemented with a restricted finance and limited resource. The sewage treatment plant is about 25 years old and has aeration technology. It was a challenge to upgrade this plant. Given that the community is spread around 70 acres and has a different gradient across the community, laying the pipe to transport the water was another challenged phase. We overcame all these challenges. Today as a community, we have been successful in making the so-called wastewater in a layman's language into useful water. I would like to end this talk with a Sanskrit shloka. Paniyam paramam loke Jivanam Jiva Samritam, which translates to water is said to be the supreme source for all the living beings in this world. Hence, let's respect this resource and use it judiciously. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Shamir. I'm a member of management committee at STI Variety, a community of 334 apartments located off Sajapur Road. I've been living in this society since 2009 when the building was initially ready for occupation. And from initial days itself, we had issues with our sewage treatment plant. Like any other community in Bangalore, water management is one of the critical aspects of maintenance. And sewage treatment plant is one of the critical infrastructure that you have in any community that needs good maintenance. Our issues with STP ranges from like getting murky water or even smelly water into our flushes very often. And whenever this issue happens, we used to call upon the vendor who will then reactively dig into the issue and find some other things and give us some reason. So we used to reactively work on those issues and get the STP back into working condition with water quality at acceptable levels. But then these issues used to repeat. So a group of volunteers, including myself, decided like we'll get into the roots of the issues and try to put a permanent fix. So we try to study our plant, the equipments, the process, the water inflow pattern. We found that the major issues were caused because of some of the wrong design that was adopted while implementing the plant. The basking chamber was not properly designed, which caused a lot of coarse materials into the tanks, which in turn caused the motors to go bad. The first thing what we did is redesign the basking chamber and replaced all the non-working pumps. Ours being a active sludge process STP, it requires sludge to be recirculated from the settling tank back to the aeration tank, and that is very critical. So we adopted a airlift mechanism for this sludge recirculation, which is a non-maintenance method, and it doesn't need any extra power also because pressurized air is available in the STP right from the blowers. So with these fixes, our STP operation stabilized. But then we also found our sewage inflow into our plant was higher than what it can handle. Ours is a 200 KLD STP, but our freshwater consumption itself was like 180 kiloliters. So that coupled with the the recirculating treated water, obviously our inflow was anywhere between 220 to 250 kiloliter per day. We wanted to reduce this. So to address this issue, we suggested implementing the water meter, and it was implemented, and we found like after implementation, people realized like how much water they were using for different purpose, and they cut down on the usage. Our consumption reduced from 180 kiloliters to 100 kiloliters per day, and this reduced the inflow into the sewage treatment plant, which helped getting all the sewage treated properly. So if more load was coming into the STP, what was happening is like some of the sewage goes untreated into the final tank, and that deteriorates the whole treated water. So the results of water meter was amazing, and it helped us streamline the STP operations. So after achieving this, we didn't stop there. We know like getting the plant in working condition is one thing, but then regularly monitoring it, keeping all the equipment status, equipments healthy, and the system in good working condition is important. So we adopted a IoT based platform which helped us monitor all the operation parameters, the system health, the staff activities, and many other things, not just of STP, other amenities also we could track. So this IoT platform is called Trackbot, and we adopted that, and that has helped us a lot in maintaining the STP plant and other systems in our complex, and detect any early indications of failures and act upon it. We didn't stop there, so we further analyzed like how we can improve the water quality, and we found like ozone treatment of treated water can yield better results. So we implemented ozone treatment, and that has also given us good results. Now we are getting like colorless, odorless water in our flush tanks. Our story of improving the STP operation doesn't stop here. We are already engaged with Transporter Solutions, who provide tertiary treatment of the STP treated water and produce potable quality water from it. So once that is operational, maybe in another month, there will not be a single drop of excess sewage treated water that is going waste from SJI-80. All the water will be like excess water will be tertiary treated, and the potable quality water will be supplied to industries which requires fresh water.
We saw how households, gated communities, and apartments transformed used water into a productive resource. But does that stop at that scale? Here are examples now where farmers are taking the used water and growing incredibly rich crops, which are also medicinal crops. Here's a village where a young worker has made sure that the water is taken to a farm pond and becomes a good fertilizer and manure for the farmers' fields. You'll see an example where a scientist has designed a wastewater treatment plant for a lake, which converts used water to a resource for the lake and transforms the wetland into a bird biodiversity hotspot. These examples are heartening examples of how to transform used water, and this comes from the city of Bangalore. There's another example where in a small town called Unja, the municipality actually auctions the used water, and farmers make use of the used water to grow good crops in an otherwise dry and arid land.
ಬಜೆನೇ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬೆಳೆದಿಲ್ಲಿ. ನೀರು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದನೂ ಈ ಒಳಚರಂಡಿ ನೀರು ಫಿಲ್ಟ್ರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕೆರೆಗೆ ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟವ್ರೆ. ಕೆರೆಯಿಂದ ಕಾಲುವೆ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಬಂದು ಗದ್ದೆ ಬಯಲಿಗೆ ಹಾಯಿಸ್ಕೊಂತಾರೆ. ಹಾಯಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಜೆನೇ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬೆಳೆಯೋದು. ಈ ಭತ್ತದ ಪೈರು, ರಾಗಿ ಪೈರು ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಇದೇ ಥರ ನೆಲದಲ್ಲೇ ಉಬ್ಕೊಂಡಿರುತ್ತದು ಬಜೆ. ಗರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಿತ್ತೆಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಒಂದು 2 ಇಂಚ್ ಬಜೆ, ಈ ಪೈರನ್ನ ಇದನ್ನು ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಗೊಂಡು ಬಜೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ ವಾಪಸ್ಸು. ಬಜೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ಮೇಲೆ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ನೀರು ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಗದ್ದೆನ ಕೆಸರು ಗದ್ದೆಗೆ ಉಳುಮೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. 2 ಥರ 4 ಥರ ಉಳುಮೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಹಿಂದೇನೆ ಇಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಸತ್ತೋಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಉಳುಮೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಆಳುಗಳು ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಇದನ್ನು ಹಿಂಗೆ ನಾಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಎಲ್ಲ ನವಂಬರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸೆಂಬರು ಅರ್ಧದಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರನ್ನ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ ಕಾಣುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಇದು, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ತೆಗೆದು ಬೆಂಕಿಗೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಬಜೆ ಆಗೋದು 38ರಿಂದ 40 ಕ್ವಿಂಟಾಲ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಜೆ 7-8 ಸಾವಿರ ರೂಪಾಯಿಗೆ ತಗೊಂತಾರೆ.
ಗರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೈಯಾಗೆ ಬಿಡಿಸ್ತೀವಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ರಾಗ ಹೊಡೆಸ್ತೀವಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಾಯ್ಕೊಂತೀವಿ. ಹಾಯ್ಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದೊಂದು ಗೇಣ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಒಂದು ಗೇಣ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಿಷನಿಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಮಿಷಿನ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಪೌಡ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ.
ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ಬರಿಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ನಾವು ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬಂದೇ ಬರ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲೂರ. ನಾವು ಜೀವನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ರೈತರು ಕೆಲಸ ಎಲ್ಲಿರ್ತದೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಡುಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ಲೇಬೇಕು. ಏನೋ ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ಪಾಡಿಗೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀವಿ
ನಾವು. ಅಜ್ಜರು ಮುಖ್ಯರು ಯಾವ ಇದಕ್ಕೋಗಿ ನಾವು ಮಾಡೋಣ, ಇದ್ರಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಜೀವನ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ನೀವು ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ನವರೆಲ್ಲ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಮಾಡಂಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅಜ್ಜರಿಗೆ ಜೀವನ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ನಾವು? ರೈತರು ಬೇರೆ ಕೆಲ್ಸಕ್ಕಂತ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ಬೇರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಈಗ ಅಂದರೆ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಬಜ್ಜಿ ಕುಯ್ಯೋದು ಬಂದೀವಿ. ಇದನ್ನೇ ನಂಬಿಕೊಂಡೇ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಇದು ಇರುತ್ತೆ 3 ತಿಂಗಳ 2 ತಿಂಗಳು ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಇರ್ತೈತಿ, ನಾವು ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ. ಇದಷ್ಟೇ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ.
ನಮಗೆ ಕೂಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಿನ್ನೋರಿಗೆ ಯಾವ ಸೊಳ್ಳೆನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವ ಗಂಧೆನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಯಾವ ನೀರು ಮುಟ್ಟಿ ಆಚೆಗೋಗಿ ನೀರು ಮುಟ್ಟಿರೂ ನಮಗೆ ಏನು ಗಂಧೆನೂ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಏನೂ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಕೆರೆ ಮುಚ್ಚಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಜನ ಉಪವಾಸ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂತೀವಿ. ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಐತಿ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಳ್ಕಣವ್ರಿಗೂ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಐತೆ, ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ದಾತ್ರಿಗೂ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಐತೆ, ಎಲ್ಲದೂ ಐತೆ.
ನೀರು ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೆಲವು ಜನ ಏನೋ ಊರಿಂದ ಬರ್ತಾವ್ರೆ. ತೋವಿನಕೆರೆ, ರಾಯಚೂರು, ಕುಂಕುಮನಹಳ್ಳಿ, ಸುಮಾರು ಊರಿಂದ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಬೇಸಿಗೆನಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಡೆ ಕೆಲಸಗಳಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನೇ ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸಾಲ್ಗಳು ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನು ಬಜೆ ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡೆ ಸಾಲ್ಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಹಂಗಾಗಿ ಕೆರೆ ನೀರಿದ್ದರೆ ನಾವು 1-2 ದಿನ ದುಡ್ಡು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಬೋದು. ಕೆರೆ ನೀರಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೂ ನಾವು ಕೂಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಈಗ ಊರಿಂದ ಊರಿಗೆ ಬಡವ್ರು ಬರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಜನ ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡು ಪಾಪ ಈಗ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಅವರು ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಾವು ಕೆರೆ ನೀರು ನಂಬ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಹಂಗಾಗಿ ಕೆರೆ ನೀರು ಹೊಡೋಕ್ಕಿದ್ರೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆನೇ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ. ಈಗ ಬಜೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಈಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೂ ಒಂದು 3,000 ಜನ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲಿ.
ಕೈ ನೀಡಿ ಬೇಡಿದರೆ ಕಾಸಿಲ್ಲ ಎನ್ನುವರೆ, ಕಾಸಿಲ್ಲ ಎನ್ನುವರೆ. ಓಯ್ಯ ಅಮ್ಮಯ್ಯ ಧರ್ಮನೇ ತಾಯಿ ತಂದೆ, ಕಾಸೊಂದು ನೀಡು ಶಿವನೇ, ಕಾಸೊಂದು ನೀಡು ಶಿವನೇ.
ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಆಶಾ ಎಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ನಾನು ಆರೋಹಣ ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾರ್ಯದರ್ಶಿಯಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಆರೋಹಣ ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಕಳೆದ 4 ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಸರ್ವಾಂಗೀಣ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ, ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಸಬಲೀಕರಣ ಮತ್ತು ಆರೋಗ್ಯ, ಹಾಗೆ ಪರಿಸರ ರಕ್ಷಣೆ ಮತ್ತು ಗ್ರಾಮ ಪಂಚಾಯಿತಿ ಬಲವರ್ಧನೆಗಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಯಿದೆ. ಆರೋಹಣ ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ನಿರಂತರವಾದ ದಾನಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದುವರೆಗೆ. ಆದರೆ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿ ಹಾಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಪುಟ್ಟ ದಾನಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳಿಂದ ಹಣನ ಸಂಗ್ರಹ ಮಾಡಿ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನೀರು ಮತ್ತು ಮಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಒತ್ತು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನೀರಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ಈ ಮಿಣಿಜೇನಹಳ್ಳಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು 8 ಕುಟುಂಬಗಳಿಗೆ ಮಳೆ ನೀರು ಕೊಯ್ಲು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮನ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ನೀರು ಏನು ಚರಂಡಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹರಿದು ಬರುವಂತಹ ನೀರನ್ನು ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗುವಂತೆ ಮಾಡಿ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗುವ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಕೆರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೂಳೆತ್ತುವಂತಹ ಕೆಲಸ ಮತ್ತು ಕೆರೆಗೆ ನೀರು ಬರುವಂತಹ ಕಾಲುವೆಗಳು, ಪೋಷಕ ಕಾಲುವೆಗಳ ನೀರು ಸಂಗ್ರಹ, ಈ ಮುಂತಾದ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಈ ಕಳೆದ 2 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ಯಾಂಡಮಿಕ್ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ಅದು ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಭಯ ಇತ್ತು ನಾಗರಿಕರಲ್ಲಿ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನದಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಮಹಿಳಾ ಸದಸ್ಯನಿಯರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು 800 ಜನ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ತರಬೇತಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ವಿ. ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ತಿಳುವಳಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ವಿ. ಏನಂದರೆ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು, ಅದರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಭಯ ಪಡಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ 3 ಅಂಶಗಳನ್ನು ಗಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು. ಅಂತರನ್ನು ಕಾಪಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ಮತ್ತು ಸ್ಯಾನಿಟೈಸರನ್ನು ಬಳಸುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಮತ್ತು ಮಾಸ್ಕನ್ನು ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಈ 3 ಅಂಶಗಳನ್ನು ಗುರುತಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಸ್ಕ್ ವಿತರಣೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ 5 ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ. ಇದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನಾವು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಈಗ ನಾನು ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಟಿದ್ದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ, ನಾವು ಚರಂಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ನೀರು, ನಮ್ಮ ಕೋಲಾರ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆ ತಗೊಂಡಾಗ ಬರಪೀಡಿತ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆ ಅಂತಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆರೆನೇ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಜೀವಾಳ ಇಲ್ಲಿಯ ರೈತರಿಗೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಈಗ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ತಗೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮದು ಮಿಣಿಜೇನಹಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ. ಈ ಮಿಣಿಜೇನಹಳ್ಳಿನಲ್ಲಿ 126 ಕುಟುಂಬಗಳಿದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಜನರ ಜೀವನಾಧಾರ ಕೃಷಿಯಾಗಿದೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹೈನುಗಾರಿಕೆ ಮತ್ತು ಬಂಡೆ ಕೆಲಸನೂ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ಕೃಷಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ 80% ಜನ ಸಣ್ಣ ಮತ್ತು ಅತಿ ಸಣ್ಣ ರೈತರೇ ಇರೋದು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ 250ರಿಂದ 300 ಅಡಿ ಇದ್ದಂತಹ ಅಂತರ್ಜಲ ಮಟ್ಟ ಈಗ 1000ದಿಂದ 1200 ಅಡಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿದೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಸಣ್ಣ ರೈತರು ವ್ಯವಸಾಯ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬ ಕಷ್ಟ. ಬೋರ್ ಹಾಕಬೇಕು, ಅವರು ಬೋರ್ವೆಲ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಅದರಿಂದ ನೀರು ತಗೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದರೆ 3ರಿಂದ 4 ಲಕ್ಷ ತನಕ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಖರ್ಚು ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಖರ್ಚನ್ನು ಅವರು ಭರಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಆರೋಹಣ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಚಿಂತನೆಯನ್ನು ರೈತರ ಜೊತೆಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಆಗ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಯೋಗಿಕವಾಗಿ ಕಂಡಿದ್ದೇನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಚರಂಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹರಿದು ಬರುವಂತಹ ನೀರು. ಈ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಯೋಮ್ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ಶ್ರೀಯುತ ವಿಶ್ವನಾಥ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಆಗ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ಸಲಹೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟರು, ಈ ಥರ ನೀರನ್ನು ಹತ್ತಿರದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರು ರೈತರ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಅದು ಉಪಯೋಗ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಚಿಂತನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ರ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದನೇ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಹಾಯಧನನ ಪಡೆದು ನಾವು ಈ ಮಿಣಿಜೇನಹಳ್ಳಿನಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಚರಂಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗ್ರಾಮ ಪಂಚಾಯಿತಿ ಆಗಾಗ ಸ್ವಚ್ಛಗೊಳಿಸಿದರೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಾಲುವೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನೀರು ಸರಾಗವಾಗಿ ಹರಿದು ಬರಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಚರಂಡಿಗಳನ್ನು ಸ್ವಚ್ಛಗೊಳಿಸಿ ಕಾಲುವೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಇದು ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡಕ್ಕೆ ನೀರನ್ನು ಸರಾಗವಾಗಿ ಬರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಮಾಡ್ತು ಆರೋಹಣ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ. ಇದರಿಂದ ಏನಾಯಿತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಳ್ಳಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ದಿನದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಒಂದು 5ರಿಂದ 6 ಸಾವಿರ ಲೀಟ್ರು ವೇಸ್ಟಾಗಿ ಹೋಗುವಂತಹ ನೀರು ಸರಾಗವಾಗಿ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೋ ಹಾಗಾಯಿತು. ಇದರಿಂದ ಏನಾಯಿತು ಅಂದರೆ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಸದಾ ನೀರಿರೋ ಹಾಗಾಯಿತು. ಇದರಿಂದ ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದರು, ಇವರು ಒಬ್ಬರು ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ರೈತರು, ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆಲಿ ನಾವು ಮಾತಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅವರ ಒಪ್ಪಿಗೆ ಮೇರೆಗೆ ಈ ಕೆಲಸನ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಅವರು ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಈ ಮೇವಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಈ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡದ ಸುತ್ತ ಮರಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮೇವಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇವರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು 4 ಗುಂಟೆ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೇವಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಹುಲ್ಲನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಕಳೆದ ಸಾರಿ ಅವರು ಕೊತ್ತಂಬರಿ ಸೊಪ್ಪನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಒಂದು 30,000ದಷ್ಟು ಆದಾಯನ ಗಳಿಸಿದರು. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ರಾಗಿ ಬೆಳೆಯನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆದಿದ್ರು. ಈಗ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಅವರೇ ಮತ್ತು ನೆಲಗಡಲೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಶೇಂಗಾ ಬೆಳೆಯನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈಗ ಮಳೆ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಈ ನೀರಿನ ಬಳಕೆ ಈಗ ಸದ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ನೀರು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೋ ಆಗ ಈ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡದಿಂದ ಅವರು ಪಂಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನೀರನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಗೆ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಥರದ ವ್ಯರ್ಥವಾಗಿ ಚರಂಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗುವಂತಹ ನೀರನ್ನು ಒಬ್ಬ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಸಹಾಯವಾಗಿ ಈ ಥರ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡ ಮಾಡಿ ಆ ಕೃಷಿ ಹೊಂಡಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಸಣ್ಣ ಪುಟ್ಟ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸಹಾಯ ಆದಾಗೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಇದು ಆರೋಹಣದ ಚಿಂತನೆ ಇದೆ. ಬೇರೆ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಇದನ್ನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ.
My name is Hoysal and Chanakya. I used to work at the Indian Institute of Science. I looked at wastewater and treatment of wastewater as well as anaerobic digestion for over 40 years. Well, Bangalore has a long history of restoring lakes, I suppose you understand, starting with a century-old Halsur, then Hebal, and then Madiwala, Jakkur, Agara, and more recently Putenali, where we learnt a lot about how we should restore lakes, especially where sewage has ingressed and water quality has really gone down. And this is where we try to put all the good parts, good learnings of different experiences into the Putenali lake. The unique aspects of YPL has been the fact that it has been designed specifically to be a bird preserve, while also not depending on only runoff as the only source of water. So even if it doesn't rain for the next 5 years, we can use the sewage flowing beside it to fill the lake after treatment, and it still has always full level, and the lake will support a large extent of birds, large types of birds, and it supports three different type of birds. First, the key element is what we learned from Agara, how to divert sewage and take only the sewage that we want, the quantum of sewage that we want. And a second part is a novel treatment system in which there are no moving parts, doesn't require electricity and no maintenance for 3 to 5 years. And third, different zones for different type of birds, which are so that the birds that wade in the water, the birds that swim and feed, the birds that dive and swim. So for all these there are different places, as well as there are islands for nesting of these birds. I think an important part also is the citizen connect that we have built, that we are trying to get the next generation more connected with the lake, and so that they become the champions and the custodians of the lake and also have the knowledge to use that lake afterwards. And of course the patronage of the forest department and the BBMP and the government also has been a key in this particular lake, because it's a showpiece where very few places you have 125 species of birds, 400 birds in just 25 acres, and it's been working for now almost 3.5 years now. Yeah, most of the time sewage is treated in a conventional wastewater treatment plant and then brought to the lake, but here within the lake itself, in the deep end, using only 1% of the land area, a novel treatment process has been made, in which in the first stage it removes all the organic matter, the mucky organic matter. In the second stage, whatever little bacteria and particles are there are eaten up by a second group of protozoans, and a third, all the nutrients are thrown out. After this, the water meets reasonably the NGT quality of water that goes into the lake. We introduce a small amount of nutrients so that life begins in this lake. This lake is a living lake. The small amount of algae and nutrients that get in starts the life in the aquatic stage, the phytoplankton or the algae, and the algae is fed upon by the zooplanktons, and the zooplankton in turn are eaten up by small invertebrates, mollusks, worms, and these are eaten by fish, which become the food for the various aquatic birds that we have. So this lake is not merely a bowl in which we are putting treated water, but also there are 4 stages of life which support the birds, and continuously it is sustainable. We have made specific, my colleagues Dr. Subramanya and Sanguni have made specific zones for different type of birds. There is a shallow end with lots of weeds to allow the wading birds to feed and breed, and there is a deep end where the swimming birds, like basically the ducks and there are reeds where they can nest, and also they can have good amount of feed. And a third part, the deep zone, is where you have the cormorants and the grey herons which dive, pick up the larger fish and nest outside. So there are 3 zones, and we have at least 125 species. Some of them are migratory, some of them are resident, and some come only to feed. So this is where the uniqueness has come of this lake. Unlike most other lakes where the depth is reasonably uniform across, here where for 3 different type of feeding habits the lake has been designed for. This lake has been designed both from the environmental perspective as well as the ecosystem perspective to become sustainable, to to support these birds for quite some time, and also with very little maintenance. Only thing you have to do is occasional removal of weeds, which we can't help anyway. We are trying to get rid of wastewater, but wastewater becomes useful water a little later after treatment. So it's important that we recycle and reuse water. We should look at water as an important resource and make sure that you use it as wisely as possible.
Most human activities in growing cities that require water produce used water or wastewater, as it is commonly known. The water demand of cities has increased many folds, whereas availability of fresh water is reducing due to exploited groundwater, erratic rainfall, long dry spells with climate change, and polluted surface water. The used water finds its way flowing out of urban precincts as the fresh water is brought in the cities. Generally, 80% of water that is supplied to cities is accounted as wastewater generated, be it black water, grey water from domestic use, or effluent from industrial use. In India, 15 million cubic meters of wastewater is generated by its cities and towns every year. Globally, maximum reuse of wastewater is for agriculture and irrigation. This practice of using wastewater for agriculture is ancient, earliest found in Greece and Mohenjo-daro of Indus Valley. Its use for agriculture production was known as sewage farms. It grew rapidly with advent of sewers, where collection of wastewater was possible. In India too, the evidence of sewage farm exists in many cities like Amritsar, Bikaner, Bhilai, Delhi, Gwalior, Hyderabad, Jamshedpur, Kanpur, Madras, Madurai, Trivandrum, and Ahmedabad. The irrigation uses of wastewater produced by the cities and used in peripheries and hinterlands required a relationship between cities and the farming rural and peri-urban regions. In the past 5 years, several Indian states like Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Haryana, Punjab, Karnataka, Rajasthan, and Kashmir have developed treated wastewater reuse policies. The reuse policies are for only treated wastewater use, with an underlying assumption that all the wastewater used will be treated. They also point to the formal use of wastewater. In my state of Gujarat, arrangement between urban local bodies and farming communities were put in place with advent of sewer lines by many cities. 4 to 5 decades ago, these systems were put in place. The collected sewage or wastewater was provided to farmers by the cities regularly and reliably, and farmers were compensated when they were using it. Today, these arrangements may be known as payment for ecosystem services. The sewage farmland in Ahmedabad was provided by the municipality, whereas in Rajkot, swap of freshwater with wastewater was formulated between farmers' cooperative and the municipal bodies, benefiting both of them. Transactions for wastewater in some cities in Gujarat are market-based. In the city of Patan, till recently, wastewater was sold to farmers. In the town of Visnagar and Oncha, the wastewater is auctioned to third party for irrigation usage. In turn, the winning bidder supplies treated wastewater to farmers. The institutional arrangement of auction by the municipality is firmed up over many years. The auction is taking place every year, initiated with an advertisement in the local newspaper, inviting bids. A formal contract is made between the winning bidder and the municipality. The revenue generated by this auction is used by the municipality for upkeep of the treatment system. The treatment system is a stabilized pond for wastewater in Uncha. Being an agricultural town, the industrial and chemical wastewater is negligible. Hence, farmers are happy with the treated wastewater from the stabilized pond. Around 40 farmers benefit from using the treated wastewater. There is no foul smell at the treatment site or farmer's field where it is being used. Farmers are growing millets, tobacco, fodder, castor, wheat, mustard, and some other crops. Now the treatment system in Uncha is upgraded and the membrane-based plant is under construction. There are no plans in place as yet to continue the wonderful institutional arrangement to put in use the wastewater that also generates revenue. The application of used water in agriculture has two distinct benefits. The first one is returning the water brought from hinterlands to cities, and second, return of nutrient to soils that are taken from the soil for growing food. This dual advantage makes used water a very attractive proposition for agricultural application that should be continued institutionally. Thank you.
One of the most stressed and vulnerable groups in the era of climate change are small and marginal farmers. What can small and marginal farmers do to ensure that they have a decent livelihood, a steady source of income, and they use water efficiently? Can polyhouses be part of the answer? Let's listen to this TEDx talk.
When we look at poor smallholder farmers across the world, and particularly in my country, India, we often think that what they need is access to better tools, education, government support, markets, and so on. Yes, they need all that, but what they really need is reliable and regular income to live with dignity. A dependable income, even if it is as small as $100 a month, is essential for them to stay out of poverty. Today, their incomes are in and out of poverty, which is extremely painful. Growing up in South India, I could not overlook what poverty did to our farmers. I was about 17-year-old when one day I saw a farmer in my village sitting next to a farm stream and eating something from the ground. Something did not seem right. I walked up to him to see what was going on. I was shocked to see him eat mud. Mud. Brown, soft mud from the stream. I was afraid he might die. I yelled at him, "What is this stupid mud-eating business?" He looked at me helplessly and said, "I'm a farmer. My crops failed. My stomach doesn't know that my pocket is empty." I walked away quite helplessly. That night, I shared this with my grandfather. He was a remarkable man, well-traveled. He was a part of Indian freedom struggle under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. Unlike me, he wasn't surprised at all. He knew of people who added rice starch to mud to calm their hunger. And he told me something profound. If you see a person walking on the road without a footwear, it is important to understand the root cause that the person doesn't have enough money to probably buy the footwear. I finished my college, started working with a big company, but that incident kept coming back to me. Why are smallholder farmers in such abject poverty? What causes them to be so desperate? And why is it that even in 21st century India, one farmer dies by suicide every 51 minutes? My co-founders and I spent about 6 months traveling across India, meeting hundreds of farmers to listen to them. it became clear that climate risk is a root cause that causes farming to be unpredictable and unviable. Farmers who make reasonable money in one season can fail miserably in the next. And farmers who could grow crops earlier in summers no longer get to grow crops in summers. Heat is so much more. The wells are drying up. Every year there are new varieties of pests and diseases. In one word, farmers told us that this is all because of God. I said, what? This is all because of God. God is the one who caused it. God is the only one who can solve it. God, in that context, I did not see as a sign of hope. I read it as a sign of helplessness. We heard from the farmers. They knew the problem, but they could not use these two words, climate risk. So we got together a team of engineers, scientists, designers from about 6 countries to co-create a solution with our farmers, which is quite unconventional. And the solution is greenhouse in a box. We call it Kheti Rakshak. It's a micro greenhouse. It's a beautiful greenhouse which sits in a small portion of the farmer's land. It's easy to build, small structure, covered with netting on all sides, which cuts off heat, prevents bugs, and saves water. We can't cool the entire planet in one day, but we definitely can create climate for a small portion of farmers' land to be suitable for farming. From our first experiences of growing vegetables, staple vegetables like tomatoes, cabbage, cucumbers, we observed that greenhouses can increase yields up to 7 times and use 90% less water. All this was too good to be true. Farmers knew that they could, all these things are so difficult to happen, so they couldn't believe it unless they actually saw it in action. So to make this happen, we had to have the courage to reimagine the agriculture. Reimagine the agriculture for a smallholder farmer. After all, this is not to grow tomatoes in an industrial setting in Alaska in winters. It is to grow tomatoes for a smallholder farmer, by a smallholder farmer, in sizzling hot Indian summers. So this greenhouse had to be small enough to fit in a portion of their land, easy enough for them to use, and cheap enough for them to buy. One of the biggest challenges that we could overcome in the process is financing. Thanks to our financing partners, today, this greenhouse is available with financing which is fast enough and cheap enough. Greenhouse costs about $1,000. Farmers pay a down payment of about $100, and the rest is financed through the loan. And this life-changing asset adds extra $100 of profit on an average to a household month on month. This is a good double of what they otherwise make. Marginal 5-10% increases in the incomes of smallholder farmers cannot move the needle forward much because the baseline is way too low. We need significant jump in the incomes, and that income has to be reliable and dependable. To ensure that farmers succeed, we also provide quality seeds, nutrition, training and advisory leveraging mobile technology. We rolled out the solution after quite a few tests with farmers about 3 years ago, and we are marching towards 2,000 farmers in this year and looking at 100,000 farmers over the next 5 years, hopefully every smallholder farmer in my lifetime. The best technologies in agriculture can reach the smallest of the farmers if we do 2 things well. Listen to the farmer with curiosity, empathy, and compassion. And keep smallholder farmers, particularly women farmers, at the center of the design and build solutions. Then we can co-create many solutions like Kheti Rakshak, which bring dignity, hope, and stability to the lives of the farmers. In this big fight against climate change, we all have to remember that we should take our smallholder farmers along. It is our collective responsibility. India is a home for about 100 million smallholder farmers. I dream of a day where smallholder farmer becomes synonymous with a happy farmer. And being forced to eat mud should never be a feature again, anywhere. Thank you.
Global warming is a big challenge and a result of carbon emissions into the atmosphere. Sequestering carbon is a target for us, and one of the excellent mediums to sequester carbon is the soil itself, or earth. Let's listen to a talk on how soils will act as carbon sinks.
Good morning. I'm going to take you on a bit of a scientific journey this morning. Under our feet, there is an unseen world more diverse than all the tropical rainforests combined. Teeming with microbial life and critters large and small, this hidden world of soil is on every single continent. But most of us know little to nothing about this vast world under our feet. And for most of my life, I was no exception. I grew up as a very curious and adventurous kid. I spent a lot of time climbing trees and falling out of them, and I spent a lot of time getting really dirty. In college, I had to take a class for a science requirement, and I was shocked to discover that being really curious and loving dirt could be a legitimate career. So it took no convincing whatsoever for me to change my major, and that's how I became an ecologist. In graduate school, I studied how the loss of a seed disperser, in this case, the winnow ant, affected the plants that they disperse. In my research site, we were discovering that these ants were moving up in elevation to escape a rapidly changing climate, but they were leaving the plants they dispersed behind. So while I came to grad school to study ants, I all of a sudden found myself studying climate change. And because ants nest in soils, I had to learn a lot more about soil. What I couldn't have predicted as that young, curious, budding ecologist was that I would spend the next decade of my life thinking about the invisible army of soil microbes and how we can harness their awesome powers to help address climate change. But before we get to all of that, let's start at the beginning. Soils are considered to be the skin of the earth. They're only a few meters thick, but they support all agriculture and every single terrestrial biome. Soils help protect our food supply, clean our water, boost our immune systems, and they serve as a source for some critical medicines, including many that have yet to be discovered. Without Earth's exceedingly thin layer of soil and its multitude of organisms, we would not eat, and humanity as we know it may not exist. And soils, like many good things, they take time to develop. They form over hundreds to thousands of years as rocks break down and plants and animals decompose. As soils form, they accumulate and store carbon. In fact, there are billions of tons of carbon stored underground, 2 to 3 times more than what we have in the atmosphere. Plants and soil work in collaboration to drive the single most important transformation of carbon on this planet, photosynthesis. Plants take carbon dioxide from the air and they combine it with water and sunshine to create sugars, and of course to grow plants. Plants and their sugars eventually decompose in the soil, feeding the microbes. In fact, most of the carbon that comes in through plants ends up in soil at some point. The carbon cycle continues. Microbes and their carbon eventually break down, and the carbon from the microbes sticks to soil particles, creating what we call soil clumps or aggregates, because microbial carbon is sticky. So when that microbial carbon ends up in a clump, it's physically protected from further decomposition. And what we know now is that the majority of soil carbon that is sequestered is actually dead microbes, or what we call microbial necromass. That necromass can stick around in soils for decades to millennia, especially if we leave soils undisturbed. But over the last 12,000 years, we have lost billions of tons of carbon from our soil as humans converted grasslands and forests into agricultural fields and rangelands, building roads and cities. One of the major drivers of that loss was the plow, which at the time was a major technological breakthrough that really revolutionized agriculture and altered the trajectory of human history. With each pass of the plow, those plant roots and soil aggregates that we know are really important are broken apart, exposing carbon to decomposition. Today, we use more than a third of our land to feed and clothe billions of people on this planet. But we're losing our soils at an alarming rate, and with it, we're losing their fertility. Without that soil, it's going to be a lot harder to feed what is going to be close to 10 billion people on this planet by 2050. That's going to put a lot more pressure on what is already a disappearing and resoundingly underappreciated resource. There is no machine that can bring soil back. No technology that can do what thousands of years of rock weathering and biological activity have achieved. But we can build our soils and put more carbon underground with a little help from plants and microbes. Rebuilding soil is going to require us to fundamentally rethink our reliance on technology and chemicals to deliver what soils can do on their own, support life. And life in soil is mostly microbial. The Dutch scientist Antony van Leeuwenhoek saw tiny organisms he called the wee beasties under his microscope about 350 years ago. And with the rapid innovation of molecular and computational tools, we are finally getting a sneak peek at who they are and how they make their way in the world. Here's the thing. A teaspoon of soil holds billions of organisms, things like bacteria, fungi, protists, and archaea. These organisms, these microbes, are the movers and shakers of nature's carbon cycle. They drive really important processes in soil. They take organic matter and convert it into complex carbon molecules. And having more carbon in soil is transformative. As carbon accumulates, agricultural fields can hold on to more water and more nutrients, building resilience that helps them deal with the ups and downs of a changing climate. That resilience means plants can grow more consistently, even when the weather is fickle. And the awesome thing is, carbon-rich soils help buffer us against what is an uncertain climate future. The trick is to really rethink how we do agriculture. So there's the good news, which is there are some tried and true ways that we can get more carbon in our soils and build our soils back. We can plow less, and we can make sure that we have roots in the ground year-round, feeding the microbes and powering that microbial engine humming under our feet. And we can do this. The other thing is diversity is the key ingredient in this recipe. Diverse plant communities support diverse microbial communities that can transform and store more carbon. Diversity is good for soils, and it's good for climate mitigation. Just like we need every microbe, we need every farmer and rancher, every climate solution, and every solver. So, healthy carbon-rich soils matter today more than ever. The other great thing about carbon-rich soils is they help farmers have more consistent agricultural operations and more sustainable ones that can withstand the ups and downs of a changing climate. That's a huge win for the people that grow our food. It's a win for climate, and it's a win for us consumers. So how do we do it? Well, there are 3 simple things we can do. Number 1, we have to protect our soils and the carbon they already hold. Number 2, we can get more carbon underground by growing diverse, climate-adapted crops. And number 3, we can let the microbes do their thing, leave them alone by leaving the soil undisturbed. It sounds simple, and that's because it kind of is, but there are some questions that are left to be answered, and there's a lot of room for us to innovate. We need to track and measure our climate progress. We need to develop more climate-resilient crop varieties that can grow deeper roots and pump carbon underground deeper. And we need to rethink our economic models in agriculture and help support and incentivize these carbon-sequestering agricultural practices. So lots of room for innovation, lots of room for research. Good news for us scientists. But we don't have time to waste. Climate change is here, and it's affecting all of us, whether we know it or not. It's affecting every single ecosystem, including agriculture. Soils are the literal foundation of life on this planet, the reason that we can eat, and a climate solution just waiting to be unlocked. So let's build back our soils, help our planet by looking down to the ground. Thank you.
We saw how people were using used water at a village level, at a lake level, at a small town level. Let's now look at the impact of used water on health. If untreated, used water can cause various diseases, including vector-borne diseases, but also bacterial and virus-borne diseases. How are scientists engaging with used water to understand its characteristics better? And in an era of SARS-CoV-2, how are they trying to use used water as a sign of the health indicator of a city and of a community? By checking used water, what is called wastewater epidemiology, scientists can find out how much of the population of a particular area is infected by a particular disease. Let's see how scientists engage with used water.
My name is Farah Ishtiaq, and I'm an evolutionary ecologist. I work on birds, infectious diseases, and wastewater epidemiology. Water is essential for life on Earth. It is the fundamental indicator for health of our ecosystem. While we all strive to live in clean and healthy environment with access to clean water, we hardly appreciate the value of wastewater. Wastewater can tell us volumes about the health of our community and our environment. And the idea here is very simple. Most pathogens of interest, like bacteria and viruses, they can live for days in the sewage water. So wastewater-based surveillance is very economical and very feasible, especially for a country like ours, India, where not everybody have access to healthcare system, and most of our disease data rely on testing symptomatic individuals. So the concept of water-based epidemiology is not very new. It has been used for more than 40 years in several countries to track diseases like measles, influenza, AIDS, and even poliovirus. Do you know that wastewater testing played a crucial role in the eradication of poliovirus in India in 2012? The World Health Organization certifies a country polio-free if there are no cases of acute flaccid paralysis for at least 3 years. Now that's where a systematic wastewater surveillance comes into play. By detecting wild poliovirus in the water, you can actually estimate presence of one individual in around 10,000 inhabitants. Now with a very systematic sampling and tracking this virus in the water, you can actually narrow down into different localities and find those areas and prioritize them for vaccination. Wastewater testing can detect the presence of SARS-CoV-2 RNA in the water 7 to 14 days in advance. So it's very useful as an early warning system to detect the presence of asymptomatic individuals in the community, and it's especially very useful into densely populated areas. Such surveillance has the power to predict neglected and emerging infectious disease. It is very feasible, economical, and as well as with the recent advances in the science and our testing facilities, we can actually collect real-time objective data to predict the emergence of these diseases. So for example, using metagenomics to understand the diversity of bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens in the environment, looking for antimicrobial resistance genes, it's a very important, very useful, not just for the human, but for animal health as well. And that's what exactly we need as an evidence-based approach more than ever, to have this One Health approach to recognize the interconnectedness between human health, animal health, and the environment. This is even more important now with growing urbanization, change in land use pattern, and also climate change. Our cities are posing a constant challenge to the global health and epidemiology of infectious disease. What we need now is a transdisciplinary collaborative approach where not just scientists or ecologists looking for drivers for diseases or pathogens in the environment. We need politicians, sociologists, everybody coming together and make a very robust monitoring system for diseases and make this wastewater testing as an integral part of our healthcare system.
Hi, I'm Basha Sridhar. I'm the CEO of Molecular Solutions Care Health. We are a learning lab involved in research, innovation, and diagnostics to improve healthcare. Imagine if you could gauge the health of a community without testing individuals in that community and merely by testing their wastewater. Imagine if you could pinpoint hotspots in your city by saying certain communities, certain geographical areas are at higher risk for things like COVID, drug abuse, obesity, or antimicrobial resistance. Just think how healthcare would be transformed. Your clinics and your doctors and your hospitals could no longer treat you with a one-size-fits-all approach. They would have to tailor their management to your condition as per your specific geographical community's metrics. For example, let's say you're a woman with a urinary tract infection and you come from a community which is known to have resistance to a particular antibiotic. Your doctor, when she looks at your chart, would look at your name, your symptoms, your syndromes, and your address. And she would say, oh, hang on, this makes me think twice about which antibiotic I should be treating you with. So this would actually change clinical decision making on her part. Imagine you're a teenager with mood swings and unpredictable behavior. Then, and let's say you come from a community which is known to be a hotspot for heroin and cocaine usage. In that case, maybe your doctor, when he or she looks at your list of symptoms, may also take your address into consideration, and in addition to investigating the usual causes for mood swings and unpredictable behavior in that age group, also asks you, how are you spending your recreational time? Have you been ever exposed, or are you using these kind of substances that could lead to such syndromes? This is the potential for wastewater surveillance, and this is how it has the potential to transform healthcare as we know it. We have been performing citywide surveillance of Bangalore using wastewater for the past 6 to 8 months. We test the wastewater from 45 different sites, which are the most populated wards in Bangalore. Using this wastewater, we test for COVID, and now we've also started testing it for other interesting things like antibiotics, antimicrobial resistance, and so on. And we hope to be able to expand this to other things as well, such as drug use. What we see is that many times, not on all sites, but in many sites, the level of COVID in those particular sites correspond with the level of COVID in that area, showing that sewage water perhaps could be a surrogate for individual testing for COVID in those areas. What we hope to be able to do is that expand this to be able to predict future waves of COVID. All the data from this project are put up online every day, and you can see it at the website given below. And every week we calculate the trends of COVID in the city. Is it increasing, decreasing, stays the same, and so on. The difficult part in using wastewater surveillance for predicting new waves of COVID comes from four major sources. A, we don't actually know if the people who are shedding virus in the wastewater through their stool are the same people who are getting tested in the community through regular RT-PCR. You all must be aware of the whole swabbing things that people do. Now, those two data are not really comparable, and so very often it is not surprising to see that what you see in the sewage does not correspond with what you see in community level RT-PCR data. Secondly, we test water from open canals in neighborhoods. Now imagine every time it rains or it becomes really hot, you can imagine that the viral load changes because that RNA of the COVID is not going to hang around there. Thirdly, all the data that we have in scientific literature from other countries are based on tests done at sewage treatment plants, not in open canals. So what you see in other countries when they use it for predictive analysis for COVID may not be able to be used in Bangalore because we are not doing it in sewage treatment plants, we are only doing it in open canals. So finally, we don't actually know when the COVID that is in the sewage was shed. Was it shed today? Was it shed this morning? Was it shed yesterday? We have no idea because we don't actually know how long COVID RNA stays in sewage. And even more interestingly, when you're testing it from open canals where the water is running, we can't actually calculate from what point upstream did this COVID RNA come from. Did it come from 50 meters upstream, 500 meters upstream? So that is where the problem comes in figuring out how to compare wastewater data with community level data. Finally, what we are understanding is that more work needs to be done, but at the same time, we should continue to do it. Otherwise, we won't know exactly how to use the power of wastewater surveillance. So what I love about wastewater epidemiology or wastewater surveillance is that it brings together so many disparate fields. It brings together public health, policy, water, urban affairs, even finance, scientific research, clinical medicine, epidemiology, you name it. So it is one of the most rapidly evolving fields and complex fields that I've ever had the pleasure to be part of.
Hi, my name is Uma Ramakrishnan and I'm a professor at the National Center for Biological Sciences, which you can see behind you. So I've been here 15 years and I work on wildlife. I work on tigers, many other species. The first question you may have is how does someone who works on wildlife end up working on wastewater in a city? Why am I in this session of TEDx? Well, I work on bats, and bats shed viruses in their feces, and we are interested in this because this allows us to survey or to check for these viruses. And as soon as the pandemic started, I was really piqued. I was really interested to think about how can the tools that I have where I use non-invasive samples, fecal samples, urine samples to understand more about animals be applied in the context of this health emergency. Very early on, we learned from studies around the world that people who are infected with SARS-CoV-2 who have COVID-19 shed the virus or release it in their feces or in their poop. And we all know where poop goes. It gets accumulated and goes to the wastewater treatment plants across our city. So early on, scientists showed that wastewater collected from households across the city can be used to monitor or look for the presence of infections in the city. Now, the virus we have in wastewater is not infectious, so don't be worried. You're not going to get it from wastewater. However, it serves as a way to actually look at broad scale infection in the city. So everybody cannot get tested, and I'm sure all of you have been through the experience of the nasopharyngeal swab. It's not very comfortable. So neither is it very comfortable, nor is it cheap. And so it's not possible to do these surveys across and at scale. So given that we were interested in this and how wastewater can serve as an indicator of infection, we teamed up with Vishwanath at TEDxBiome, and with help from the Bangalore Sustainability Forum, we thought, let's just test this out in 2 sewage treatment plants. Let's look at whether we can detect SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, in wastewater, and whether this is also present in some amount in the treated wastewater, because this is clearly very important. Treated wastewater is pumped out of Bangalore to surrounding areas in peri-urban Bangalore for agriculture. So our work initially showed that while we could detect SARS-CoV-2 in inflow, the water coming into the sewage treatment plant, almost all water which was outflow, treated wastewater, did not have any SARS-CoV-2 in it. So in collaboration with BWSSB, we were able to explore this, and while it was just a very small pilot, we worked through the second wave and we were able to investigate inflow and outflow in the city. So how do we actually test wastewater for the presence of SARS-CoV-2? So just as you get a test, you get a test to check whether you are infected or not. Someone puts this swab into your throat and scrapes inside you and pulls it out. We take that sample to the lab, we extract RNA or the genetic material of the virus, and we look for whether that sample has viral RNA, right? And we do this quantitatively. We can actually assess whether a sample has more or less viral RNA. Similarly, we can take wastewater, but now in wastewater, the RNA is much diluted. Imagine that there's lakhs of people whose waste comes to this sewage treatment plant, but only a few are infected. So clearly, the amount of RNA in the wastewater is very diluted. So the first thing we do is we filter the wastewater to kind of concentrate whatever signal there is of the SARS-CoV-2. We then extract the RNA as you do in regular testing, and as in regular testing, we use similar approaches to quantitatively assess whether we have more, less or no viral RNA of SARS-CoV-2. So in this way, we can actually assess whether a specific sewage treatment plant has high levels of viral RNA, low levels of viral RNA, or no viral RNA at all. And over time, if we keep doing this, we can hopefully catch surges in infection before they are caught by regular clinical testing that you do in the public health center.
Used water is about citizens engaging as individuals, as apartment owners, as layout residents. Used water is about scientists and villagers engaging with it and turning it to productive purpose. Used water is about scientists engaging with it to find out disease patterns. Used water is also about business. There are different kinds of businesses which are sprouting around this concept of used water. For example, eco-friendly soaps and detergents. A young entrepreneur is turning used water to drinkable water and converting it to good use. In the process of transforming used water, there's a whole sector of populace or workers who are engaging with it. And there's a researcher who's working with them to understand how to make their living conditions better and to make sure that their quality of life is not impacted by the hard work that they do. Come, let's listen to them.
Namaste, I'm Smita Kamath from Pranapurna. We manufacture natural cleaners and disinfectants with citrus bioenzymes, soap nuts and essential oils. We are also trying to experiment and revive a lot of the traditional products which are naturally, abundantly, the raw materials are available all around us. We try to experiment with it and get the necessary certifications with the lab certifications so the industry acceptance can happen. there is enormous amount of wastewater that is generated in Bangalore city alone, and this is most of it coming from the domestic use of surfactants, heavy surfactants, and all the sulfates and the phosphates that are present in our detergents and in all the cleaners that we use, and which is getting into all our water bodies, the lakes, our rivers, and causing enormous frothing and flaming up as well. So within 1 minute of applying any of the chemical cleaners or any of the skin applications, or inhaling the fumes of the chemical cleaners or the disinfectants that we use in our living spaces, within 1 minute it gets into our bloodstream through the ingestion process, and this our body finds it very difficult to filter out of the system. And this is what is a huge cause of a lot of allergies and skin issues that our children are also facing. So these bioenzymes and the soap nut based cleaners are completely safe for kids, for your pets, as well as for our earth. So what can we as citizens of the earth do to shift our lifestyles to work with earth's natural regeneration process? Very simple, we can easily shift to the natural cleaners which our ancestors have used and which grow abundantly all around us. For example, you would have heard of soap nuts and shikakai already, and a lot of the gram floors which are used as body scrubs. You can also make bioenzymes with any fruit peels, but specifically we have experimented with the citrus peels, and we make what is called bioenzyme. It's a fermentation process of 3 months with jaggery 1 part, 3 parts peel and 10 parts water. It is fermented for about 3 months, and this is filtered, and then we have developed further products based on this, and we found extremely intense antimicrobial properties, which has both the antibacterial, the antiviral properties in it, and the antifungal. Now these are easily reduce all the lather that is generated by the chemicals in the cleaners that we use, and this in combination with the soap nuts can completely eliminate all chemical usage in our homes. So this is something we can do for the earth, where we reduce our own consumption of water. The wastewater is very easy to treat, and the effluent that goes out into the water body is also safe, and the water that goes out into the water bodies, the earth can easily deal with this, and these microbes also add to the microbiome that exists in the water bodies.
Hi, I am Vikas here from Trans Water System Private Limited. I have been in the water industry for the past 12 years, and our focus is to bring sustainable water management to the cities of our country. Bangalore and other cities of India require huge volume of water to keep growing sustainably. Is our infrastructure currently supporting this kind of growth? By 2030, just Bangalore will need around 300 crore litre of water to become sustainable. How do we make our city sustainable? The way forward, which we believe, is recycling, and this is the only way forward for cities to sustain in terms of water. The water management in our country currently is based on water which is coming into the city as rain. For example, a city is planning their water management based on the level of water in their dam, and then they decide their water where to be distributed. However, developed countries do their water management based on what is going out of the city as wastewater, because that is more predictable. Imagine a city has a certain population. The city exactly knows what is the volume of wastewater which is going out of the city, and their water management is planned based on what is going out of the city and not what is coming into the city. Our cities, Indian cities, should plan their water management based on what is going out of the city and not based on what is coming into the city. This way we become more predictable in terms of water management. The government has mandated sewage treatment plant to all apartment complexes who are more than 20 units, and its sewage treatment plant is mandatory for all IT parks, malls. However, sewage treatment plant is used to recover water which is good for gardening and flushing. So what happens to an apartment complex is they are not able to use the entire water. More than 60% of the water is sent to the drain. Imagine there is a 300 units apartment. They will generate around 200 KL of water, 2 lakh litres of water every day, out of which they will be able to use 50,000 litres of water, and remaining 1,50,000 litres of water sent to the drain because they do not know where to use this water. In Bangalore alone, around 200 crore litre of excess STP treated water is sent to the drain. Imagine tankers standing in from Bangalore to Hyderabad, 6,000 litres tanker standing in from Bangalore to Hyderabad. That is the volume of water which is currently going to the drain after partial treatment. People have spent money to treat this water partially, and even after that it is sent to the drain. Our vision is to recover this partially treated water to a very high quality potable water and then supply it to industries. We have an example here in Bangalore where a 325 unit apartment has excess water of around 1 lakh liters of water every day. We are converting that to a very high quality water and supplying it to industries. Imagine a laundry unit currently using borewell water which has very high level of TDS, we call total dissolved salts, and now we are supplying a very low TDS. Their borewell, their detergent consumption can drastically come down and they get a very high quality water. An apartment doesn't waste this excess water which is currently being just drained. So this is the way forward we feel is for the industries and the apartment complexes, where the wastewater from one apartment becomes a resource for an industry, and Bangalore's industrial water requirement can just be met by just using this excess wastewater. Our equipment is a unique 11-stage treatment process where we take in STP treated water as input water and pass it through a unique 11-stage treatment process which is as per direct potable reuse norms, and we produce very high quality water. Say incoming water total dissolved salts is 1000 ppm, our treated water will have 30 to 50 ppm of treated water quality, and this is very useful for industries because they don't have to do any additional treatment before using our water. They can directly use our water for their industrial processing. The boilers will not have scale, the laundry industries don't have to use as much detergents they are currently using. Electroplating industries can use, and many other industries can use this water because technically it is high quality potable water. Our equipments have now been deployed in large IT parks, malls and many industries. We are able to recover very high quality water and supply it back to the industries. We have current installed capacity of around 34 crore litre of water which is recovered every year, and by this we believe the cities of our country, industrial water requirement for cities of our country will be met by this excess treated water. We have decided to dedicate our lives towards creating this infrastructure of water recovery for the cities of our country, and we believe this is the only way for cities to become sustainable, to recover the wastewater and reuse. One man's wastewater becomes other man's resource, and this way we can make our cities sustainable.
Cities are our home, and yet it is surprising how little we know about what makes them work, what makes them tick. A lot of work that gets done to make our cities home for us remains invisible. Hi, I'm Kavita Wankhede, and I'm here to talk about some of the most invisible people in the city. I'm here to talk about women in sanitation. This is Trichy, one of the many million-sized cities in South India, and what you're seeing on the screen is a decanting station. This is a place where waste is brought in not only through the sewer network but also through cesspool, pit latrines, etc. through trucks, and it's brought here to be safely treated. The people you're seeing working in the background are what are known as desludging operators or honeysuckers. And this is Aravali. She's one of the 5 gumptious women working in a sea of men. Aravali represents one of the many invisible women working in sanitation. These women professionals work across the entire chain of sanitation, be it toilet construction, toilet maintenance, conveyance, treatment or reuse. They work across the public, private and informal sectors. They work in many roles as masons, as toilet caretakers, as government officers in administrative, health and engineering cadres, as private entrepreneurs, as engineers in treatment plant. These are just to name a few. So what is the problem exactly? I think as far as development programs go, whether it's water, sanitation, health, etc., I think gender has been recognized as a key organizing principle. Women have been recognized as users, as participants, as beneficiaries, and the importance of keeping their needs central while designing the program has been recognized. But what I think is missing is to recognize that in those very same sectors, women are present also as professionals, be it as frontline workers or administrators or entrepreneurs. And when you start looking through the lens of women professionals, a whole new world emerges with its own set of challenges. Coming back to sanitation, many of my non-sanitation friends ask, well, why are you really encouraging women to work in these dirty sectors? But I think that's a very, very unhelpful way of looking at things. For once, so-called dirty sectors like sanitation or solid waste provide as much of an essential service, say water and transportation in a city. Secondly, these represent real economic opportunities, whether it's a secure public sector job in sanitation or running one's own small and medium enterprises. So what are the challenges when it comes to women professionals in sanitation? One of the things is that there aren't enough women across all these sectors and subsectors that I have mentioned. Secondly, the women professionals who are there actually face a lot of challenges. Some of these challenges are very sector specific. So to take the example of sanitation workers who constitute a huge amount of this workforce, sanitation workers typically face huge amount of stigma, they face serious health and safety concerns and do not have adequate social protection. These are problems faced by both men and women workers. However, we have anecdotal evidence that more informal the work gets, the less social protection is there, the percentage of women workers significantly rises up. This lack of evidence actually is one of the things cutting across all these different sectors. Another example of a sector-specific challenge is, for example, location of waste treatment plants, which may be far away from the city and may pose safety concerns for women. Many of these challenges are more deeply structural and very familiar to all of us. So these challenges that women face may include societal pressures to get off the workforce at various points of their life cycle. These may include discriminatory workplace policies or culture norms. It may include things like lack of role models. Very, very familiar. And one more familiar thing that cuts across all these subsectors within sanitation is lack of women leaders. There just aren't enough women leaders, whether you're talking about senior ranking government officers or whether we are talking about head masons in the informal sector or whether we are talking about heads of enterprises. So what can be done about this? I think the first step is to recognize this issue and keep it central. Once we do recognize it, there are a host of things that can be done and you can see some of these on the screen. Secondly, we can learn from examples. So we saw an inspiring image of Aravali, a desludging operator. So what are the things that she can teach us? Another example that I would like to talk about is she teams that work in Trichy. These are SHGs which have been federated at a city level and provide invaluable service of maintaining community toilets, at the same time empowering themselves. The last thing that I would like to speak about is that these women, very few in numbers, their stories need to be heard, they need to be celebrated. We run an annual digital campaign called Women in Sanitation, and please do join us to share your stories too. So let's remember cities are our home, and these are the women who make them our home. So let's celebrate the stories.
Entrepreneurs have different ways of engaging with the problem at hand and providing a service. One entrepreneur is working on wastewater and converting it to tertiary treated water. Another one of them is using nature-based solutions, a system called Decentralized Wastewater Treatment Systems. Let's listen to how this approach is taken up.
Most of the water that we use in cities is for domestic purposes, and around 80% of it is turned into wastewater. But is it really wastewater? Wastewater contains pathogens and some useful, valuable nutrients, organic compounds, energy, etc. If we use our wisdom and remove the pathogens, then this wastewater becomes useful. It is a resource. We can recover the wastewater and reuse it for restoring our water bodies, for keeping our surroundings clean and green, and also for growing our food. So what is an appropriate way to treat wastewater? Most of our big cities have got conventional wastewater treatment systems. These conventional centralized treatment systems are designed in a way to remove rather than recover resources. And most of the times they are quite expensive. You would often see that to these centralized systems, there are pockets in the city which are not connected, and therefore the wastewater is not completely treated. Decentralized nature-based systems can reach these pockets in the city which are not connected and provide solutions for them. In this way, we can treat the entire wastewater in a city and try and restore the natural water balance. A good example of such a kind of decentralized system is DWATS, standing for Decentralized Wastewater Treatment Systems. This is a combination of anaerobic and aerobic treatment modules that are biological in their working and are gravity based. So there is no energy required for its functioning, no chemicals are required, and it's a completely biological treatment system. DWATS can be implemented in households, in residential apartments, in layouts, for office buildings, institutional buildings, and even to restore our water bodies. DWATS can be implemented for treating black water, grey water, fecal sludge, and even for water that is storm water mixed with sewage. One of the good examples for a city like Bangalore is to restore the lakes that we have. Most of our lakes are contaminated, and if we can trap the wastewater flowing into these lakes upstream of it and treat it, then these water bodies can be restored effectively. DWATS is designed for a particular context, and therefore it is more effective in its treatment. And as it is a natural treatment system, it need not be switched on or switched off. So it can work effectively even when there is no flow into the system, or when there is excess flow due to heavy rains or shock loads into the system. Reuse can be a key environmental intervention for a water secure urban India, and DWATS can contribute significantly to it. The approach to wastewater management is key. If we approach wastewater management not in isolation but from an ecological perspective, then the entire city can benefit as well as the microenvironment. Designing and implementing decentralized wastewater treatment systems can be sustainable as they are in sync with the environment, are robust systems, and effective in treating the wastewater. These systems help to conserve and restore the natural environment, reducing the water stress.
Used water is about samaj, it's about bazaar or businesses or entrepreneurship. It's also about sarkar or the government. The government has much responsibility to make sure that regulations are put in place and treatment plants are put in place for used water to be collected, conveyed, and treated to adequate standards before release into the environment or before release for productive use. Come, let's listen to what the government and the regulators are doing about used water and trying to manage it better.
Hi, I am Dr. Lakshmikant, worked as a state level committee member, Karnataka State Pollution Control Board. So today I am going to speak on few topics as a pollution control board, as a regulatory authority in the state of Karnataka. So it has been constituted in 1981, renamed in the year 1981 as a Karnataka State Pollution Control Board in the pursuance of Water Act, and it is acting as a regulatory body for some of the rules and notifications like fly ash, so BMW biomedical waste, then plastic pools, EIA. So then some of the challenges which pollution control board are facing is they have very less staff in number, and till recent past there are no any new fresh recruitments happened in the board. So that is a major challenges faced by the board. So some of the small and new industries, even they are not aware of the consent process, that whether it is really required consent from the pollution control board. So when they will go for when they will go for inspections, so they will come to know that these people have taken consent from the board. So then later they will apply for the board. So there are this kind of challenges are there. So as I have mentioned, there are less staff in the board, that so even number of industries are more. So even a jurisdictional officer, so very difficult to inspect each and every industries. Go there, visiting over there and inspecting the industries. So these are all some of the challenges faced by the board. So all are aware of the fact that ZLD, that is zero liquid discharge, is mandatory to install by some of the industries which are generating effluents, that is trade effluents. So now already in CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board, they have already issued a directions, strict directions to all the state pollution control board to make sure that all the specified industries are supposed to install these ZLDs. Some of the industries have already installed online monitoring system, and some are in the process of installing such things. So as we know that installation of sewage treatment plant is mandatory for even institutions. So many of the institutions they have already installed sewage treatment plants. So in their capacity, including educational institutions, I mean apart from commercial establishments and other things, even educational institution also came forward to this thing. Yeah, apart from that, the board has initiated another wonderful initiative, that real-time online monitoring. So where it is a CETP, that is common effluent treatment plant, where the untreated effluent from the industries, so they are transporting it to CETP, that is common effluent treatment. So that has been completely real-time monitored by the CETP. So that is a great initiative done by the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board. So now let us throw some light on treated wastewater. So in this regard, there are already policies have come up that how to utilize the treated wastewater. So in this regard, some of the states like Gujarat, Haryana, Punjab, Jharkhand, even in our state also that has been happening. So in that they have clearly mentioned that incentives should be given for the using of treated water for some of the other reasons. So as we are aware of, and the fact that more than 50% of potable water is used for the industrial purpose. So this is a major concern, one should look into that. So I think you must have seen in the newspaper and media that more than 50% of Bangalore sewage is going to leading to Bairmangala Lake, so through Vrishbhavati Valley. So in this regard, 1,500 MLD of treatment plant is required to clean the effluent of this, which is going connecting to Bairmangala Lake. So it is a huge investment. It is not there, though it is a responsibility of the government. So since it is involved too much of big amount of money, so if there is any CSR initiatives in this regard, if somebody come forward from the industry, so that it will be things will happen at the earliest. So we know that water cannot be created, so either in the lab or outside or from anybody or even through magic. So it is a responsibility of every individual or institution to conserve every drop of water. So with this, let me conclude that, so please conserve water, every drop, for the future generation.
For water, there is a 10% rule. You must reserve 10% of every space for either water to be stored or to recharge in the aquifer. But there's also a 30-30 rule for the oceans and forests. Come, let's listen to the 30-30 rule, and what does the 30-30 rule mean?
When I was a kid growing up in the Mediterranean, I was fascinated by the underwater world that Jacques Cousteau showed us on TV. When he started filming in the mid-1940s, the Mediterranean shores were still full of large fish. But when I went to the sea to swim in the 70s, I saw none of that. There were sea urchins on a barren bottom, but I never saw a large fish. The industrialization of fishing after Second World War put the latest nail in the coffin of Mediterranean marine life. I thought nature was lost, until I started scuba diving in the Medes Islands Marine Reserve in Spain. 1 square kilometer, fully protected from fishing and other damaging activities. I still remember that first dive in the reserve. As soon as I put my head underwater, I felt like diving into one of Cousteau's films. What was missing from the sea of my childhood was there. Groupers, sea bass, octopus, scorpionfish, seaweed forests. Just a few years of protection had allowed the sea to bounce back. I have seen this miracle happen in other areas across the ocean, like in Cabo Pulmo, Mexico, where local fishermen were so upset with not having enough fish to catch that in the mid-90s they asked the Mexican government to create a no-take area, a national park in the sea. We surveyed the marine environment then, and the place was an underwater desert. When we returned a decade later, everything had changed. What had been a barren sea was now a kaleidoscope of life and color. We saw it come back to pristine in only 10 years. including the return of the large fish like groupers, jacks, and sharks. And those visionary fishermen are better off now. From diving tourism inside the reserve and better fishing around it. But today, globally, only 7% of the ocean and less than a fifth of our land have been protected. That means that we have converted most of our planet into a tame environment, where 96% of the mass of the mammals is us and our domesticated livestock. Only 4% is everything else, from pandas to tigers to elephants. And we have removed over 90% of the large fish in the ocean in the last century alone. On top of the loss of nature, we have global warming. This summer of 2021 has seen some of the hottest temperatures in human history, in places that one would expect to be cool, like Canada, Finland, and Siberia. This extreme heat kills hundreds of thousands of people and fuels raging wildfires, turning towns, forests, and grasslands into ashes, also killing billions of individual animals and trees and many coral reefs around the world. No place is safe anymore unless we rewild our planet. If we are to prevent a global disaster, we need to do two things. As we know, we need to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases to almost zero. But we also need to draw down the excess carbon pollution in the atmosphere and in the ocean. How can we do that? To capture the excess of greenhouse gases, we need nature's help. Because trees, grasslands, peatlands, mangroves, kelp forests, and healthy oceans are the best and most efficient technologies to remove carbon from the atmosphere, and they already exist. As long as we protect them, they do the removal for free. The more biodiversity there is, the more carbon pollution it can absorb, the more it can help stabilize the climate. And biodiversity also gives us clean air and water, food, and protection from floods, storms, and even wildfires. The problem is that nature cannot keep up with us. The biodiversity that is left today is not enough to absorb our impacts any longer. That's why in 2018, I put together a team of top scientists and economists to answer the question of which areas in the ocean we must protect first. And how much of the ocean do we need to protect? We decided to focus on three objectives: biodiversity, food, and carbon storage to help mitigate climate change. If we think of each objective in isolation, there are trade-offs. Protecting the top areas for biodiversity could result in a loss of fishing catch, for example. To solve that problem, we developed a new framework to optimize multiple benefits. Picking which areas to protect depends on how much we value the different objectives. We found that if we gain the same weight to each biodiversity, food, and carbon, we would want to protect the right 45% of the ocean to maximize the three benefits. We also found that even if we didn't value biodiversity, the minimum amount of ocean we would protect would be 30%. So 30% of the ocean is the floor, the minimum area that we need to protect if we want to preserve marine life and all the benefits it provides for people. Similar analyses have been done for the land, also showing 30% as a minimum. Armed with this research, we at National Geographic partnered with the WIS Campaign for Nature and launched a campaign for 30 by 30, meaning at least 30% of the planet, land and sea, protected by 2030. Working with the governments of Costa Rica, France, and the United Kingdom, we built a high-ambition coalition for nature and people, which now has 66 countries in it and growing, all supporting 30 by 30 as a main target for a global deal on nature. 30% of our planet by 2030. Only that amount of wild nature, together with a massive reduction in carbon emissions, will be able to get us back on track. And of course, we need to manage our activities more responsibly everywhere else. 30 by 30 will involve a combination of strategies, from national parks and marine protected areas to lands managed by indigenous peoples and local communities, which have been effective in preventing habitat loss, often more effectively than conventional conservation methods. Expanding recognition of the land rights of indigenous peoples is an effective and moral solution for protecting our world. And protecting the land can be done only together with the people living on it, like Canada is doing with its indigenous protected and conserved areas. Some will say, however, that we cannot afford to protect our natural world. Well, let's look at the numbers. A study has put the cost of protecting 30% of the planet at about $140 billion a year. That's only a fraction of the money that governments use to subsidize industries that pollute our air, waste our soil, and empty our ocean. We need to reverse the flow of that money from funding the destruction of our life support system to preserving it. The solution to the problem we have created has been here all along. I understand that the idea of protecting a third of our land and ocean may feel threatening to those who see only the short-term profits of their destruction. But I am hopeful because I have seen with my own eyes how nature can recover in those marine reserves. And I have seen how the return of nature has helped people thrive and build a better life. We just need to give nature the space it needs so she can continue providing for us. Thank you.
Many a time in the development space, good projects are not taken up because of the lack of political will. This is a common narrative. But what can political will actually do to transform used water to a resource? Can political will help solve the problem of water scarcity in semi-arid areas? Can it provide livelihood security? Can it provide food security? And can a city become a fertilizer and water factory? Let's listen to a minister who drove these initiatives in the city of Bangalore.
I'm Krishna Bairegowda. I'm a member of Karnataka Legislative Assembly from one of the constituencies in Bangalore city. Our cities consume a lot of environmental resources, but our cities can also produce and give back to environment a lot of resources. If we look at cities creatively and see how we can convert problems into solutions, miraculously some solutions do emerge. For instance, in our constituency, there are many lakes. These are hundreds of years old. However, due to scant rainfall in the last 20-30 years, most of the lakes had been dry. Over the last 7-8 years, step by step, we have built small sewage treatment plants by the lakes and managed to fill about 20 lakes in our constituency using sewage water. So these are treated to secondary level, and the treated water is let into the lakes, which in turn goes to recharge the badly depleted groundwater table in the city areas, which can be used for construction and which can be used for any non-potable requirement. Hence, reducing the water requirement of the city itself. Instead of drawing all the fresh water, we can reduce our dependence on fresh water and reuse the water resources that we are already drawing from various other sources. Based on this experience in our constituency of treating sewage water and filling up the empty lakes, the government in Karnataka between 2013 and 2018 looked at Bangalore and also looked at the surrounding areas around Bangalore. Now, Bangalore draws a lot of fresh water from the Kaveri lake. And a lot of that gets converted into sewage and flows out of Bangalore without properly being reused. At the same time, if you look at villages and towns around Bangalore, due to the consecutive drought over the last 20 years, the water tables have depleted, farmers are unable to grow their crops, livelihoods are affected. Since agricultural prospects were becoming bleak year after year due to the reducing rainfall and reducing water availability, there is a lot of migration from villages to a city like Bangalore, enhancing the already complex problems of a city like Bangalore. If we can revive agriculture, if we can improve the ground table, and if we can to some extent reduce the impact of consecutive drought in the rural areas, then we can actually solve some of the problems in Bangalore by preventing migration. And also the sewage that is flowing out of Bangalore, if it is treated and pumped into the lakes that are present in plenty of numbers in many of the villages surrounding Bangalore, in the districts surrounding Bangalore, it would revive agriculture, it would recharge the groundwater, it will create livelihood opportunities, and it can revive the whole rural economy and lives also. Keeping this in mind, the government decided to take up several projects worth about 2,500 crores to take the treated water from Bangalore and pump it to hundreds of lakes around Bangalore in many of the rural areas, in many of the villages surrounding Bangalore. So we have taken up Koramangala Challagatta, KC in short, Valley project, which is pumping water to about 150 lakes in the first phase. In the second phase, we expect that that project will support about another 250 lakes. So this could dramatically change the scenario in a district like Kolar, which has been consecutively drought hit. And we are already witnessing a quiet transformation, a revolutionary transformation in the rural livelihoods. For many of the youth who are in Bangalore doing very low level unskilled jobs have now gone back to villages to take up agriculture, to take up floriculture, horticulture, dairy farming, sericulture. Many of the water guzzling eucalyptus plantations are being removed, and those fields are being converted into agriculture and horticulture. Villages which were becoming de facto old age homes, with many of the youth migrating to city, now we are seeing a reversal of youth going back from city and taking up agriculture again. It has created tremendous opportunities for fisheries activity. Each lake can give employment to about 5 people in every village. So the economic potential, the agricultural potential, the food security potential, and the livelihoods opportunity creation, and also the revival of the village society itself are issues whose impacts we will feel, I think, over the next several decades. If we look at the challenges going forward, climate change being the primary challenge we face, and if droughts are going to be a recurring phenomenon, and with water scarcity likely to be a permanent part of our society and our lives, we need to look at water very creatively, and we need to find all ways of not only optimally using water, but also reusing water, not just once, twice, but several times. So as we look to the future, as we look to cope with climate change, I think water and the water consumed and produced by the city in the form of used water, we need to very closely look at this as a very valuable resource and see how we can reuse every drop of used water produced by cities and this can go a long way in solving the problems of areas around the city. So hence, city being a instead of being a producer of sewage, instead of being a producer of environmental pollution, can actually produce a very valuable resource that can help a lot of people around. So we can, all we need to do is look at the problems creatively and see how we can use a challenge to solve a problem around us, and solutions will come forward.
Various artists have found ways of engaging with the environment and communicating the need to make sure that we protect Mother Earth. Let's listen to a poetry which is talking about such a thing.
I wonder if the sun debates dawn some mornings, not wanting to rise out of bed from under the down feather horizon. If the sky grows tired of being everywhere at once, adapting to the mood swings of the weather. If clouds drift off, trying to hold themselves together, make deals with gravity to loiter a little longer. I wonder if rain is scared of falling, if she has trouble letting go, if snowflakes get sick of being perfect all the time, each one trying to be one of a kind. I wonder if stars wish upon themselves before they die, if they need to teach their young how to shine. I wonder if shadows long to just for once feel the sun. If they get lost in the shuffle, not knowing where they're from. I wonder if sunrise and sunset respect each other, even though they've never met. If storms have regrets, if volcanoes get stressed, if compost believes in life after death. I wonder if breath ever thinks of suicide. If the wind just wants to sit still sometimes and watch the world pass him by. If smoke was born knowing how to rise. If rainbows get shy backstage, not sure if their colors match right. I wonder if lightning needs an alarm clock to know when to crack. If rivers ever stop and think of turning back. Meet the wrong sea and their whole lives run off track. I wonder if the snow wants to be black. If the soil thinks she's too dark, if butterflies want to cover up their marks, if rocks are self-conscious of their weight, if mountains are insecure of their strength, I wonder if waves get discouraged, crawling up the sand, only to be pulled back again to where they began, if land feels stepped upon. If sand feels insignificant, if trees need to question their lovers to know where they stand, if branches wave at the crossroads unsure of which way to grow, if leaves understand they're replaceable and they still dance when the wind blows. I wonder where the moon goes when she is in hiding. I want to find her there and watch the ocean spin from a distance, listen to her stir in her sleep. Efforts give way to existence.
In an era of climate change, where global temperatures are warming and we are faced with unpredictable rainfall, used water can become a scarce resource which can be put to productive use and mitigate climate change. It can also be a productive resource to reduce a city's water footprint. Its engagement by various citizens, entrepreneurs, and the state can make sure that pollution is controlled and that our rivers and lakes flow clean and freely. In the coming days, in the coming decades, used water will become a very productive resource, full of nutrients, but full of pathogens which need to be managed. And by engaging with used water, we can turn what is a pollutant to a resource, and that is the future for used water and for India. Thank you. Hope each one of us had an interesting session. All that remains for me is to offer thanks on behalf of the Biome Trust to all the speakers who took time off of their busy schedules and were very willing to participate in a sort of a multidisciplinary forum and come together and share their expertise, their experiences with all of us. This is just the beginning of a conversation. We'll make sure that a copy of the recording is available to all those who participated, all those who listened, and even to all the speakers. We'll make sure that the questions are put forward to the right speakers and that we try and get answers and send it off all across to you. As I speak, and if you're a cricket lover, you'll have heard of his history being made. Ajaz Patel has joined Jim Laker and Anil Kumble as the only person to take 10 wickets in an innings. And so we're witness to a small part of history as the conversation goes on. And again, a big thanks to the organizing team who helped put together all this. Maitri Dore for the sketches that were part of the cartoon. And as all of us will see, that multidisciplinarity is the call of the hour. We need performers, we need poets, we need politicians, we need researchers, scientists, we need entrepreneurs, we need individuals, all to pitch in, because solutions are not going to come from one single source. Solutions will come from everybody. And this is the era of a million solutions. A big thank you. Hope this Saturday you will enjoy your lunch, and we will continue to meet at some point of time. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.